Hey everyone, good morning. Today's morning devotion is from John chapter 13. I read verses 18 through 30, and this is when Jesus is at Passover, the Passover dinner, Passover feast, and he's basically telling the disciples that one of them is going to betray him, and they ask him which one, and he's like, the one that I give this bread to, and he dips it and gives it to Judas. And then Judas leaves the dinner and he goes out into the night, right? We have to know a little bit about the story and what's happening. So Jesus had 12 disciples. One of those 12 disciples was Judas. Jesus ultimately ends up being crucified. He is dying a death that he does not deserve for us, that he may take on the penalty of our sin himself so that we don't have to pay the price so that we can be free. But here at this dinner and what we're seeing something that may not really make sense to us, right? Jesus knows that Judas is going to betray him, yet he allows him to stay. He allows him to remain, and he doesn't do anything about it. He passes Judas the bread, and life goes on, right? Jesus is not fighting or resisting Judas. He knows what has to happen, and he allows it to happen. Jesus isn't wasting his time or energy on focus on trying to stop the plans that Judas had put in place or to stop the schemes of the Pharisees. And I think this is something that we should really pay attention to take away from, because sometimes our focus can be just so against Satan and so focused on what the enemy is doing and trying to stop him, where really the bigger thing, the more important thing is to just make sure that we're living our lives obedient to God and in the will of God. And good morning. So the enemy is always going to be at work. And yes, we should be aware. Yes, we should be on guard. Yes, we should be careful not to fall into the traps, the lies that the enemy is setting up around us. But God can help us navigate all of this, right? It's by focusing on God that we are able to discern, we are able to see, and we are able to know how to move and function despite the enemy's work in this world. So we do more good by focusing on the will of the Lord than we do trying to figure out the plans of the enemy and stop them. God already knows the plans of the enemy. He already has a plan that is going to counteract any attack, any scheme that the devil could ever plot. God is superior. His plan is superior. His will is superior. He knows what is going to happen. So when we're trying to figure out what to do, y'all, we need to just follow God and be obedient to what he is doing. We are on the offensive. We don't have to wait for the devil to make a move for us to act. No, we just act in accordance to what God is telling, how he is leading and how he is instructing. I was trying to think of some type of example or something. This is the best that I got, right? So it's like if the enemy is building the sandcastle and we know that it's bad and it needs to be destroyed, right? We could keep trying to kick over the sandcastle as he's building each part, right? Or we could just sit there and watch and wait for God to send an enormous wave that just destroys the whole thing all at once, right? We can waste energy going after the little things, or we can wait and focus on trust on God and just go after the big things and just wipe everything out all at once. That's what Jesus really is doing here. God is bigger than anything the enemy could ever do. Judas is allowed to do this evil for it's leading to this greater good. There's evil happening all around us every day, and we can try to stop it on a small scale, but that small scale difference and effort can't be our only and sole focus. We have to join God in the bigger picture and the bigger work. If a kid is listening to bad music and we know it's planting bad seeds in their heart, right? We can take away their phone. We can stop them from hanging out with their friends. We can say they can't watch certain things on TV. Every time something else or some other access to secular world or secular music becomes available to them, we can shut it down, right? But if we're so focused on stopping all of those little things, then our focus on those little things could distract us from doing the bigger thing, which would be going to God in prayer and praying that God change the desires of their heart, that God change what is pleasing to their ears, that God get into their heart to change and transform so that those little things don't even become desirable or pleasurable to that person anymore. There's a bigger picture that we can't lose sight of by focusing on these smaller matters. Yes, they're important and they're beneficial, and if we focus on God, he may lead us to do them, right? But we can't allow us doing things in our own effort and might distract us from the bigger picture that God is wanting to do. All right, so God's bigger picture is always greater than like our temporal efforts. Instead of us trying to control, if we focus on God first, he'll show us how to have real and lasting impact. Although Jesus knows that he's going to overcome, it doesn't mean that he's not troubled by sin. The fact that he knows Judas is going to betray him is troubling to him, yet there's no other way. Jesus is on top, right? There's no way for Jesus to be arrested, for Jesus to die without him allowing himself to go through that, right? Jesus, like, the enemy is not big enough or strong enough to get God himself, right? Like, the enemy cannot triumph over God. The only reason that Jesus is crucified, the only reason that Jesus ends up dying is because he allowed it to happen, right? He allowed himself to go under that he may overcome. He's already supreme. He is already on top, but he had to overcome, not for himself. He was already up there. He's already where he needs to be. He had to overcome for us because we are under. We start under the hand of the enemy. We start under the grip of sin. We start on the unfortunate side of life because we are born into this sinful world, and Jesus came to rescue us from that. He had to allow himself to be put under so that he could overcome for all of us, so that his victory could be applied to our lives. He had to allow these events to play out as they did so that the bigger picture, our salvation, could be accomplished. That's what's happening. So we might think like, Jesus, how are you just going to sit there and let Judas do that to you? Jesus has a bigger picture in mind, and that bigger picture is you and I. He knew what he was doing. So when we see him, when we're living and we're seeing things like, God, how is this happening? God, why is this happening? Y'all, we have to trust that God has a bigger picture in mind, that if we get close to him, we will be able to then play a part in that bigger picture, right? And that may not look like what looks logical or practical for us right now in this world, but we have to trust that God already knows what the enemy is planning to do, and he knows how to get victory for each and every one of us, no matter our situation, no matter what it is that we're under. God has already overcome for us, and now we just need to accept him, that victory may be applied to our life, that we may be able to walk in the freedom and the liberty that he has gained for us. God came to this earth to overcome, that we all may overcome, and that is done as we believe in him, as we trust in him, and as we seek to develop our relationship with him. It doesn't have to make sense, but we have to trust that God knows what he's doing, and that his efforts are always going to be greater than our efforts. So if we're going to put our effort anywhere, it should be into the will of God. I think that's like the biggest takeaway. I think there was something else, but that's really the big picture here, is that God knows what he's doing, and we don't have to try to control everything, but rather if we would just be obedient to God, we can have lasting impacts that overcomes and demolishes every plan that the enemy is plotting in this earth. God knows what it is, so we have to trust him that we may all continue to overcome. You guys have a great and wonderful day today. Bye.